Chapter 9 Odorant de Metuant. On Good Friday, when the demons came for the Gurkhas, they got more than they bargained for. The Hindu children of the Himalayas, born and raised in the shadows of their massive mountain peaks, were survivors and warriors of the first degree. 100 years prior, their ancestors had surrendered for the last time, then joined the British Redcoats in the brutal subjugation of their own people. After the war, they continued dutifully serving the British East India Company, bringing their unruly Indian cousins into line with the Empire's aims. Judah Jai Pandit was barely 20. His birthday had come and gone just the week before. His father had been a Gurkha infantryman, and the fierce young man proudly followed in his footsteps. The pathway led him from the garrison in Nepal to the battlefields of France and a flat-seeming foreign land devoid of the towering mountains that define the world as he knew it. He had been told of alpine mountains that rose up to the south, but Judah Jai felt that if you could not see the peaks from wherever you stood, they could not truly be called mountains. Judah Jai had been mulling that over, staring out at the flat Belgian countryside, standing watch as Good Friday's night fell. When he saw the wave of men coming out of the dark toward his fire trench, he sounded the alarm with the trigger of his Lewis gun, sending rounds spitting into the line rushing toward him. Within half a minute, the entirety of the Gurkha Royal Rifles Company was at the lip of the trench, adding their fire to Judah's. When the German dead men breached the barbed wire and reached the trench, Judah and his Nepali brothers met the charge with their heavy, boomerang-shaped kukuri knives. Judah cut down 7 Germans before a bayonet nearly speared him. He dodged the thrust, but tripped backward and went ass over tit into the trench. His arms flailed, and he felt his bloody kukuri machete slip from his grasp and spin away. Then came the impact of his skull, striking the duckboards 8 feet below. Then he was out. His fellow Gurkhas fought the dead men fiercely for another 10 minutes. The kukuri was the near-perfect weapon to face the dead men's onslaught. The physics of the blade, with its forward bend, made it ideal for slashing blows that cut bone as easily as it might cleave thick brush and saplings. Had their enemies been killable, the Gurkhas would have made chowder of them. Unfortunately, they were not. Killable, that is. The fighting was as good as done when the first Gurkhas were overwhelmed and murdered by the sheer numbers of German dead men. When the dead Gurkhas rose and bent their kukuris toward violent amputation of their own brothers in arms, the tide quickly turned. When Judah Jai awoke, his head felt as though it had been struck squarely by Isaiah Taylor's 16-pound fence ball. He was on the duckboards of a trench filled with remnants of men in grey and men in green, whose bodies had been so utterly savaged in the battle that they were no longer ambulatory. The Gurkhas stood their ground to the last man, and after the last man fell to the demons, those that could rise rose, inhabited and infested by the old souls of broken men and women whose thirst for death and bloodshed was in no way sated. They ran on into the night, devouring everything in their path, collapsing at dawn, right around the time Judah Jai came to. Judah was covered in tacky blood. He found a kukuri in the mess. It was not his personal weapon, but in the pile of limbs and rent corpses, he could not tell where his had vanished off to. Whoever's kukuri he had would not miss it, and Judah did not propose to go forward into the unknown unarmed. He searched the trenches for life. After an hour of walking the killing field, head pounding and back aching, he gave up hope of finding survivors. He walked the boards to his dugout. In the confines of his temporary home, he washed away all the blood and gore he could, stripping his ruined uniform. In his kit, he found neatly folded dress greens and put them on. He cleaned his acquired kukuri of blood, then ran his chakmak along the blade until it was shaving sharp. He fitted into its sheath and packed the rest of his personal belongings into his rucksack and slung it on his back. He took his Enfield down from the rifle rack and headed out. At the MG nest, he used a periscope to glass no man's land one last time. To the east, nothing. What had been the German front line appeared deserted. Given the toll the battle had taken on his company, Judah had to assume that the Germans broke the Gurkha ranks and drove a salient deep into British territory. He was ashamed he and his men failed to hold the line. He did not yet know that holding the line was a physical impossibility. Judah Jai took his kit and headed west, rifle in his left hand, kukuri hanging ready in his right. Blood was the only thing that could wash away his shame. He swore he would not sheathe the kukuri again until it was bathed in vengeance for the loss of his dead brothers. At noon, he found them. The ranks of dead Gurkhas were surrounded by dead Germans, dead British cavalrymen, black Senegals and Somalis, pale French infantrymen, and a score of dead Belgian civilians. Judah Jai Pandit could make no sense of the battlefield. The dead all lay as if sleeping, giving no evidence they had been fighting each other when they fell. He said a prayer for his countrymen and one for his sanity. Then he continued on, following the Somme River's edge. He traced its curves for 2 days. There did not seem a better path to take. It walked him directly to his fate. Judah slept unmolested through the night on Saturday. He rose and walked all day again, then slept under the stars on Sunday night. He continued his slog on Monday, weathering the rain and lightning that came at sunset in the remains of an ancient stone cottage whose roof had tumbled in over the winter. He slept off and on, awakened by lightning that dashed itself against the earth. When the rain subsided, he tried to get back to sleep, but the damp chill cut to the bone. It differed from the dry Himalayan cold he had been born in, and he decided that, since sleep would not embrace him, he ought to continue until the dawn came and slumber then. The storm gone, the moon's full grace shone down, lighting his path beside the Somme's flow. He had been walking for nearly an hour when he caught the faintest odour of unwashed men and blood. The kukuri hung ready in his hand. He saw the outlines of men moving through the dark, slow and sure, hunting. Judah Jai saw no sense in running. If they were his enemies, he would die on the battlefield. If they were allies, he would not. Judah liked it when choices were refined into something simple and stark. "Who goes there?" he challenged. There was laughter from the dark. Judah realized there were a lot more of them creeping through the night than he had thought. He had long since accepted that he would die at some point. In Nepal, there were 1,000 ways that death, the goddess Kali Mata, the Dark Mother, could take a man who walked the mountains pretending she was not there, just out of sight waiting for you. Whether it was the altitude stealing your breath, or breaking your heart? A slip in the ice that sent you plummeting into a crevasse? Or an avalanche that buried you deep and killed you with starvation if suffocation and bitter cold did not take you first? Kali was there. From the blue sky and the towering peaks to the icy tundra and floes spreading from their feet, she was always there, waiting patiently. Judah's mind told him he stood now in her presence. Then a shiver went down his spine. He had a flash of fear, and his body trembled. Perhaps it was not Kali before him. Perhaps it was her lover, the world ender, the sower of chaos, dancing father and mother god of the apocalypse, Shiva. As they closed the distance with him, Judahjai shook away the superstitious terror, ashamed. These were men, and they were coming for him, weapons drawn and ready. He would meet them on the field and test their mettle. If death was here for him, it was not in the hands of some supernatural deity. It was in the hands of men, and he would bow to no man. He ran toward them, screaming his battle cry. But Judahjai was wrong. These were not men, and perhaps the mythology of his Hindu upbringing was closer to the truth than he wanted to accept. The dead Romans who chased Finbar Kelly through the night were overjoyed when they realized the Hindu lad would not run from them as Finbar had. They charged forward to meet him, gleeful. They were shocked by his efficiency with the kukuri. He gutted and dismembered 4 of them before they overwhelmed and took him down, and even then he fought and savaged his attackers with the blade. A strong arm wrapped around his neck from behind, and despite his hacking and slashing, the dead man who held him would not let go. They hog-tied him and dragged him back through the woods, triumphant. The one-eyed, kilt-clad man who led them, Centurion Oberon Junius, picked up Judah's bloody kukuri. He spun it in his hands, admiring the weapon. The damage done to the first ranks of men that captured the Gurkha was a lesson in its destructive capabilities indeed, and it had a much more promising heft to it than the British bayonets did. It reminded him of the Roman gladius sword he had worn on his hip for 2 decades, 2,000 years in the past. The bend in the blade was an innovation, and he could feel that this was a blade made for hammering, scything blows, more than the traditional stabbing he was accustomed to. He did not mind. He was an old Roman dog, but he knew the key to survival was learning every new trick one could. Oberon Junius could not wait to try out the weapon firsthand. He had 2 of his subordinates hold Judahjai fast. A third grabbed him by the hair and yanked his head back, exposing the strong neck and Adam's apple. Oberon saw the pulse pounding in Judah's carotid, his heart rate revealing fear. But the man's eyes remained defiant. Odoron demetuont, said a voice behind Oberon. Oberon Junius turned to see who had interrupted him with the Roman dictum, "Let them hate us so long as they fear us." The man was on horseback. He wore the body and uniform of a French field marshal. His cape was thrown back over one shoulder, and he sat the saddle imperious, fist resting on his hip. General Publius Quintilius Verus looked past Oberon to Judahjai, whose defiant glare had not changed. Where is the joy in victory if the enemy does not know he has lost all before the final blow comes? Bind this one and bring him along. Gather your men. We must have him and 2,000 more. We will teach them to hate us. Then we will teach them to fear us. Then we will put them all to the cross. And so, Judajai Pandit was given a brief reprieve. He was the first captive taken that night, destined for crucifixion. The legion swelled its ranks as dead Romans rose and flocked out of the darkness to General Verus's reborn standard. They followed Verus west and swept up 200 more prisoners before settling on a wide field and getting to work. By dawn, nearly half of the prisoners had been crucified. Judajai and the remainder of the survivors were bound hand and foot to each other with bales of telephone wire and left to await the legion's sunset return. They spent the day listening to the cries of the freshly crucified, and as Verus predicted, any man still holding fast to hatred found himself embracing fear. Even Judajai Pandit's appetite for defiance ebbed. As the snow began to fall and the sun began to set, Judah watched the dead legions rise. Then the horror of crucifixion began again.